Hello and welcome back to another episode of Podcasting is Praxis. It's a slightly shortened cast today for reasons. We may need to cut this, but it's possible that David joins us a bit later in the episode. But hi, my name is Rob. My pronouns are he and him.
Hi, I'm James. My pronouns are they and them.
And I'm Alistair. My pronouns are also he and him.
All right, I think we mostly made it through that in one piece.
Had a wobble at the start there, Rob, but I think you managed to save it at the end.
Yeah. I think this is okay. For fuck's sake. All right.
If not, all that shit after you say "Welcome to Podcasting is Praxis" will be cut out, and then everything will be back to normal. It's fine. We'll get it in post.
What's the Mal quote? All under heaven and chaos, situation excellent. Love it. Let's go.
Yeah, something along those lines. Right. So, in a slight departure from our normal proceedings, we're doing literally all the vegetables up front because I only have one story that I was interested in this week to talk about. So there's a lot of vegetables up front, but then after that, I guarantee you, I have an article for you that is 100% sweet sugar and dessert.
Pure syrup.
Pure, exactly. HFC straight into your motherfucking veins. One of our favorite authors returns to the fold with new tales to delight us with.
Oh, goody.
Right, but I wanted to start with money because that's the one thing I wanted to talk about this week. Because once again, I've been hearing that that the British state has no money and can't have any money, and that if the British state spent any money, there would actually have been a run on the pound, and then Britain would have been Greece again, or I don't know, pick your favorite basket case economy, and everything would have been bad, and therefore the smart fiscal adults had to do the thing and rob your nan of having heat in this winter. Means-tested heat, naturally, I should say.
Yeah, guilt, G-I-L-T, is being removed from the dictionary. Things of this nature.
Yeah, well, we will be talking extensively about guilt because there is an interesting... Basically, today's subplot lies within the nature of guilt. But yeah, so essentially, once again, we're doing the thing where we say if we don't cut the economy to pieces now, then Liz Truss happens again, and so on and so forth. Although there was a very good piece in the Financial Times today where what I thought was sort of the natural thing to do was they literally asked a bunch of stock traders hey, when you heard about the 22 billion pound black hole that Rachel Reeves talked about, did you think it was time to sell off gilts? And all the stock traders just said, nah, that's like a rounding error, we don't care about that shit. So there would have been no run on the pound, but everything's ideological anyway.
It's so funny when you actually take these numbers and put them in perspective. Yes, 22 billion pounds, which is in an absolute sense a very big number. But do you know what's an even bigger number? The British gross domestic product. Shut the fuck up. You can find that shit digging around the sofa cushions, but the sofa is unfortunately property of some very rich people. So you can't go doing that, otherwise you might mess up the upholstery.
Yeah, in case you were curious, by the way, last year the British GDP was almost 2.3 trillion. So 22 billion is literally chump change.
Yeah, I mean, all they care about is the solvency of the British state in the sense of its ability to pay debts. They don't really care about the current balance unless it looks like the problem with Liz Truss, etc., is they thought, these guys are going to fatally floor the British state's ability to repay its debts. That's what that was. It wasn't about how much was in the till, etc. It was about, are they actually going to keep the country solvent in the long term so that the gilts and the purchases and the currency trades will, bear fruit down the road. And 22 billion is not really that big a deal, like you said, but more generally, I mean, as long as it's good debt that is, a wise investment, the markets generally don't care. If we built a proper fucking train network in the UK and poured billions into it, the markets would be all right with it. They'd make a lot of bitching and groaning in the short term, the rich would, because they don't want to pay for it with taxes or whatever. But they would actually quite like that in terms of its increase to, gross domestic product. So,
and also we would again, we would have a thing, but we've covered this in previous episodes.
Assets aren't real. It's just another word for liability, unless you're very rich. So the state can't own things because the state is bad. The state is de facto communism. Therefore, the only thing we care about is a number that sounds big but isn't really.
Yeah, but the thing I wanted to talk about today is like that the black hole that Reeves talks about doesn't exist, but there is sort of, I won't say a black hole, but there is essentially sort of like a money black hole that's been created between the Treasury and the Bank of England, where like currently more than £10 billion a year like does disappear for no good fucking reason. And there was a good piece about it in the Financial Times by Toby Nangle, and that's sort of I read it last week or 2 weeks ago. That's sort of what got me interested in this. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. So basically, we have to cast our minds back a little bit to 2008, 2010, Corona times, 2015. So like the last decade or so. And what we did, if you remember, like money was really fucking cheap. Interest rates were essentially like zero. And the way that we did this was through a process of quantitative easing, or QE.
Yeah, and then when we made the money really cheap, we started to do literally nothing with it except line the pockets of we've said all this shit before.
Yeah. So see literally all the the pods we've done before this. We've talked about a lot. Anyway, if you're a very basic primer on QE, it's the Bank of England bought like shed loads of treasuries and other bonds, corporate and state bonds, since the financial crash, and also again a lot during Corona. By doing this, they kept the interest rates on those bonds incredibly low and made sure that there was money flowing into the economy. This is, if you were alive in the years before the interest rate shot up, this was where the whole money printer go brr thing came from. That's this process.
Yeah, I think that sort of underpins every single action that any government, a British government especially, takes or does not take, is the fact that we can just go to the Bank of England and say, more pounds please, and by law they will do it.
Well, yes and no, and that's sort of where the rub comes in. But basically, during all our various times of QE, quantitative easing, what happened is, like, in comparison to the other major banks that did this, so the European Central Bank and the US Federal Reserve, like the Bank of England bought like way more gilts, so treasury bonds issued by the by the UK state, than like the Fed did or the ECB did. So by the end of 2021, the Bank of England holds just over 37% of all UK government debt on its books. That's like twice more than the US Federal Reserve ever bought. It doesn't even, like, we even bought more state debt than the Europeans did when they were trying to, like, make sure the Italian economy didn't, like, keel over. Just by way of comparison. It's an insane got a bank out amount. Of it. Yeah. So, but the thing is, like, just because the Bank of England bought all those gilts, it didn't mean they did disappear. They're not inactive. They are active instruments of the state, and they also have to be paid back over time. So they're not inactive. So they're still on the books of the Bank of England, less so now than before, but we'll get there. And they are still doing things. But that's specifically so because the Bank of England is demanding that payments are made, and that now these bonds are being slowly sold off. But for about a decade, actually all was quite well, because after the Bank of England bought all these gilts, the dividends on those went up quite a bit, because the interest was so low. The price of state bonds, national state bonds, rose everywhere, and that meant that, like, the value of the assets on the books rose a lot, and that meant that, like, they paid back, because they the Bank of England made money on these bonds, on the gilts. They gave that, like, the profit on those back to the Treasury. That happened for about 10 years between 2011 and 2021-22. It's quite incredible. Like, the UK state made about 125 billion over the last decade, just for simply holding, through the Bank of England, its own bond issue, which isn't like, if you think about it, that's weird, but that's kind of an incredible process.
Well, it's insane because rather like to reassure the market that we're not going to destroy currency supply and mess with the currency itself, instead we pretend that us wearing a fake mustache and glasses is not really us, and we're going to sell some of our own debt to ourselves, and we on the other end are going to give ourselves a loan, and then when we repay the loan out of our gross domestic product, which goes back into ourselves, we're going to turn around and hand it back to ourselves. And because the gilts were not destroyed, because they continue to exist, and because no currency supply was messed with, that makes it all okay and means that we haven't just printed money, which we did.
But it's like this is the fundamental fiction of quantitative easing, and a lot of like underpinning the modern economics in the West in particular. But there's an interesting process that's been going on for the last 2 years, specifically since October of 2022. Like that flow of profits from the Bank of England to the Treasury and therefore to, British state expenditure has been reversed. That mainly coincided with the rise in interest rates, as well as the decision by the Bank of England to unwind this process of quantitative easing. So they didn't only stop buying gilts, but they actually started selling off the vast amounts of holdings that they do have. So this is... if you care to note, this process is called quantitative tightening because it is the reverse process of quantitative easing.
They reverse the polarity on the big money hose.
Essentially, exactly, yes. So it really means they are reversing what they've previously done. They're selling off all these gilts back onto the open market. And it also means one other thing which is quite important. This is from the article by Toby Nangle. Quote, last year, the Treasury sent the Bank of England £44 billion to cover both the financing gap on its quantitative easing portfolio and the losses realised on its bond sales. This was more than the UK government spent on long-term care in general.
Cool.
So now, if you're basically, because now the interest rates are much higher than they were originally, but the value of the bonds being held by the Bank of England is lower, that means the Treasury is basically having to reimburse the Bank of England because it is selling on purpose gilts at a loss into the open market.
All of this to pretend we're not changing the available amount of currency in response to economic conditions is mad. It's totally mad.
Well, the baffling thing, I mean, you're right, James, but the baffling thing about this is in this process where, like, because the Bank of England is selling off all these gilts regardless of whether or not they make a loss, Britain is the only country in the world where the agreement between the Bank of England and the Treasury is such that if the Bank of England makes any losses on these transactions, the government is mandated to make good those losses. If the Americans do the same thing, the bank just eats the loss. If the Europeans do it, the central bank just eats the loss or simply doesn't sell for a little while. It's only the UK that is insane enough to do this in this particular manner while realizing losses.
I mean, you just said the magic trick there, which is just don't sell them. Just like, yeah, but this is the thing. They don't have to sell them. They could just sit on them and do nothing with them, and it would accomplish the same goal without the austerity. But we can't have that because that potentially could be a market signal that the bonds are not actually worth what they should be worth, which means that the currency implications of it would make the rich unhappy because potentially it could cause their assets to be worth less as a consequence. So instead we go through these smoke and mirrors to pretend that's not what's actually happening.
Yeah, so let me read you. I read some other bits. There was a good piece from an investment firm called Columbia Threadneedle by their analyst, a guy called Christopher Mahan. I'm going to read you a little bit about it.
Name.
Yeah.
Mason's Ball and Cup Investment.
The Bank of England is the only central bank that has a quantitative easing indemnity clause, i.e. if it makes any losses, they must be made good by the state, and therefore taxpayers and the current expenditure. This indemnity was negotiated in 2009 when Alistair Darling was Chancellor, i.e. back when Labour was in power, because they are the responsible money people.
I love fiduciary responsibility.
Mervyn King, then governor of the Bank of England, was sceptical about quantitative easing and insisted the government underwrite any losses. At first, these losses never came. Instead, the zero interest rate environment allowed large profits to be repatriated to the Treasury. This is what we were talking about before. This is that 125 billion of profits made on the bonds held under QE that went back to the British state. However, but those days are gone now, and the projected losses now dwarf any of the gains made previously. Because
selling off my stuff, because I'm afraid that I'm afraid of the losses selling this stuff off will make, so I'm going to sell it off.
I mean,
well, it's more like we said we would do this, and therefore, if we don't do this, the markets will think we're unreliable, and therefore we will simply, keep doing it, even though we're at a loss. Even though we operate at a loss, but we, the Bank of England, don't care, because all our losses are, handled away by these people who are us but pretend are not us, because our accounts are made whole by the Treasury. And if the Treasury realizes a massive loss and that causes, say, the end of the winter fuel allowance, that's not our problem.
Like, Rob, let me walk through this, and you tell me if I'm wrong here, because I'm not sure if I've got this down 100%. But my understanding is that essentially, rather than raise taxes on wealth assets during the financial crashes to constrict the money supply and raise the value and prevent it falling as all this unrealized debt starts to fall over. Rather than doing that, they basically took all the bad debt and said, that's ours now, and you're made whole, you don't need to worry your pretty little head about it. Then they held on to the debt until the debt essentially paid out, until it was made good because the economy had recovered because it hadn't gone into a tailspin. And then they took the profits from that. But rather than just take those profits, which essentially would work out to be like a taxation by the back door, now they're essentially issuing these bonds to increase monetary supply again, so that there's no simulation of taxation of the rich's wealthy asset class.
It doesn't quite work that way, because when you say debt in general, you have to be quite specific and say you're talking about state debt. And the reason that they're selling the reason that they bought it in the first place, which was quantitative easing, was there was post the financial crash and during Corona, and in the meantime there was just a general concern that if the central bank wasn't pumping money into the economy, that the economy would simply keel over. Now, instead of doing this the way, I think we would have much preferred, which would have been to literally give, people who live in the country money in the currency of that country.
People who spend money on the things in the country, rather than the people who go, thank you very much, and it just disappears into a fucking portal to the warp.
Or just pay the people's mortgages who were defaulting. Just pay the mortgages for them.
Sure. So, but instead what we did, because that's communism, we're not allowed to do that, is what we did is this process called quantitative easing, which meant we gave a shit ton of money essentially to banks and investment firms, and then said, if we give you scads and scads of free money, will you lend it out to firms to do productivitiness and hire more people, and thereby create the stimulation of the economy by several steps removed that doesn't make us look like communists? Instead, what we got was the crypto bubble, pretty much. Because banks said, well, we could invest this in something useful, but hey, there's this thing that has insane returns. It doesn't do anything. It just burns the planet. But, those returns are looking pretty sweet. Oh, and also we will use it to...
Until the number goes bad, and then the banks go, these crypto investments are actually very risky. And then they withdraw all of their fucking positions in the crypto markets, therefore crashing them.
Yeah, therefore, and then the money does essentially burn up, but we're not the end of this process in terms of its effects. James, you are right. It is what QE did, and what this process now is doing at the end of the day through several hoops, is making sure that capital holds its value, that people with houses and assets that those remain at a certain price level and don't collapse. But it's not quite as sort of down the line as you were talking about before. But I want to keep talking about these specific interactions between the Bank of England, which holds a shit ton of treasuries, which are now making a loss that have to be made good from the current account at the Treasury, which means, that the Treasury is paying money to the Bank of England. Again, these are two normally independent institutions, but the interaction
from all the ways
here
in which they are not independent whatsoever.
Yeah. Of course, but this is. They're not independent. This is all just like it's sort of robbing Peter to pay Paul in a way, but like.
But Peter is also Paul.
But Peter is also Paul, and Paul's also Peter. But like, it's in the conventional economic wisdom that we are currently living under, which is stupid, but this is what we have. This is the system.
Three Stooges logic. Yes.
Works. Yes. So like. The current estimate, because as I was just mentioning, or as that piece from Threadneedle Investment was just mentioning, the projection is now is because of the interest rates being so high, is that the amount of gilts still on the books at the Bank of England are no longer making a profit. They did that in the past, like I said, the 125 billion. They are currently projected to make losses instead, somewhere between 100 and 175 billion pounds. And all those losses, because the Bank of England is the only central bank that has this clause, must be made good by the Treasury from the current account, which means literally like taxpayer money or new debt. But it's, so like you'd have to, currently we are projected over the next like 10 years, 8 years, 10 years, give or take, that we have to pay the Bank of England about £10 billion a year, again, which would cover the totality of long-term social care, for example. And instead, we're doing this because in 2008, Alistair Darling agreed with the Bank of England that they will be indemnified for their losses.
Sensible, grown-up politics.
So, like, again, within the... You could just say, look, why don't we just simply... Why doesn't the Treasury simply say, and Rachel Reeves say, go fuck yourself, we're not paying that money, this is a bullshit system, we all know it's bullshit, and they're simply no longer participating in it.
What's the Bank of England going to do? Go to another country? I don't think so.
Well, that's very true, but I think at that point, again, within the sad realities of, finance capitalism as it currently exists, at that point, you would have a massive crisis of confidence, because essentially what would happen at that point is the UK state saying to its main creditor, who is itself but at one step removed, but therefore by everybody else in the world as well, who holds 50% of the UK state obligations outside Britain, basically, is you would say to them, actually, we are no longer good for the money that we borrowed. So at that point, you would have a massive financial crisis. So because the market's basically functioning entirely on the basis of the confidence fairy, if the Treasury simply says we're no longer participating in this stupid game, you would create an actual financial meltdown.
It's still real to me, goddammit!
Well, no, to quite literally, in order to keep the markets hard, we're fin-doming ourselves. And if we ever stop doing that, the markets will lose their erection. That is not even that much of a joke, frankly. Like, we literally, in order to convince the rich, hey, we're not actually going to tax you, and we're not going to devalue your assets by messing directly with currency supply, what we've done is we've split ourselves in two, and we've made ourselves our own creditor, and we love the taste of our own creditor's boot, who is ourselves. And, that lets you be sure that when we do these trades, which basically equate to controlling the monetary supply by raising or narrowing the amount of debt that circulates in the economy, we're actually messing with the currency because it's still real. It's just sitting on the shelf not being used. We're not destroying currency. It's still there. You don't need to worry about it. And don't worry, we've got this clause in that means that anytime we do mess with this, if there's any imbalances in the actual velocity of circulation, amount of currency that's circulating in the economy and at what speed, that would perhaps imply the necessity of some kind of taxation, some actual destruction of cash to balance it. Don't worry about it. We're not going to do that. Instead, we're just going to cut our social budgets, all to keep our creditor, who is ourselves, happy. And because we treat our FinDom creditor self well, that means you can trust us. We're not going to default on you either, baby. Like,
also the added bonus, of course, of cutting, state spending. Being
that's why they do this.
The negative multiplier that you get from that. So for every pound that you don't spend, you get like an extra negative £2 or whatever the fuck it is.
Yeah, so also why the Labour government's going to run into hard times very quickly, but sure.
Yeah, I mean, they did promise us misery, so
yeah, that's true.
They've got that going for them.
So, and I can't stress this enough, the way that this is functioning, i.e. that the Bank of England is... There's two things going on. The Bank of England is the only central bank in the world that has this indemnity clause that says, the current account must make whole the Bank of England regardless of any circumstance. The Americans don't have this, and the Europeans definitely do not have like that part of the agreement. But the other thing is and this is from the piece from Columbia Threadneedle again. Quote, for most central banks, balance sheet reduction, i.e. selling off the amount of treasuries and gilts and various European state obligations, is being pursued passively, i.e. they're not actively dumping shit on the market. This is understandable as the prices for those bonds are currently much lower and the yields much higher than when the central bank bought those securities. Inflations and rate hikes have depressed the market. So central banks in general have not wanted to lock in the losses at today's low bond prices. So every central bank except ours is not selling off because they're simply selling off into a loss position. So why would you do that when you're the central bank and you are the literal money printer? You can just stick this into your back pocket until, the circumstances change and you can sell this into a much more favorable marketplace.
Imagine being more fiscally self-flagellating than the fucking Germans. Just completely
than the ECB,
bonkers.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, it's by design. They're literally, the whole reason the system is set up, in my view, and Rob will probably disagree because he'll think I'm being overly reductive, but the whole reason this is set up is to create these kind of situations where a government that's so inclined has a credible reason in which to cut the welfare state and remove that as an ongoing cost. That is literally it, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, credible insofar as the media is absolutely 100% to the hilt on board with it, but yeah.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
I think that the destruction of the welfare state is not something that the Bank of England is essentially interested in or cares about. I think
a necessary evil.
No, but it's
I think it is much. If it had two choices, save the welfare state or follow its self-imposed rules, it would follow the self-imposed rules to its own destruction. It is literally, that thing from No Country for Old Men. If the rule brought you to this, of what use was the rule? The Bank of England would simply say, well, we followed the rule, and would stop thinking.
Yeah, but my whole point, Rob, is that that's the whole reason this was set up, was to create and contrive this exact sort of situation and mechanism. They knew what they were doing.
I mean, sorry. Anyway, back to briefly talking about sort of the Europeans and the Americans again. This again from Columbia Threadneedle. For example, at the U.S. Federal Reserve and the European Central Bank, the process of quantitative tightening, i.e. selling off all these bonds back into the open market, simply involves letting the bonds mature, i.e. you don't sell them off, but every state bond has an expiration date at which... Yeah, and when it expires, the state has to pay the face value of the bond of the obligation back. So if it's you sell them for 10,000 plus interest. If the bond matures, the central bank goes back to the Treasury and says £10,000, please.
I mean, isn't that a massive misnomer? Essentially, well, not misnomer, but every other bond that the Bank of England has ever issued, pretty much they just renew it every single time. But for some reason, this time.
To be precise, the Bank of England does not issue bonds. It's the Treasury and the British state that does. It's an important but critical difference.
It's important and critical, except for the fact that they're the same thing, but they're not. But they are. It depends on who you're asking, who is in the room, and what phase the moon is in.
Yeah. Central bank balances therefore shrink steadily as time goes by because they bought a shitload of bonds in 2008. Those mature, you pay off the face value, but that's like a slow shrinking over time process. And it doesn't actively involve any of these central banks. They simply hold them. When the expiry date comes, they collect their money, and that's like a passive process that just happens over time. Again, from Columbia Threadneedle, this makes sense as there's always a risk that any active sales from the central bank could pressure the general market for those gilts downwards. Because essentially, if you hold like 40% of all UK state bonds and you start selling like wads of them off into the market, you depress the entire market for those state bonds, including the brand new ones that the Labour government might like to sell. So there's a load of good reasons not to be actively selling. Reason A, right now you're making a loss every time you do it, and reason B, you are constraining the ability of the current government to issue new bonds and therefore do state spending on things like the winter fuel allowance or HS2 or the NHS or, anything else that you might like or need in the modern world.
And might I posit a third option or third reason? You don't have to do it.
Yeah. No. I mean, you have to do something with these bonds because you have to maintain the fiction that this is all very important. You can't put them in the shredder. That's like the one thing you cannot do because that would create an actual market crisis. But anything else, you could do whatever the fuck you want.
Yeah, I mean, you don't specifically have to sell them.
No, and essentially the Americans and the Europeans specifically are not. The UK, once again, is the only one who does.
Yeah, because they want to do the cuts. Well, that's what it comes down to.
Again, I disagree because I think they will simply follow the rule, and if that leads to cuts, the Bank of England and the Monetary Policy Committee specifically says that's not our problem. They don't care whether or not it causes cuts. They simply wish to follow the rules.
Yeah, well, Rachel Reeves cares if it causes cuts in the sense that she loves doing them.
Again, it's they all want cuts, they just don't want responsibility, so they create a system that creates a diffusion of responsibility of, look, we're just following the rules. Sadly,
they're
all fine with this.
Yeah, sadly, we have been forced to cause several thousands, tens of thousands of pensioners to be very cold this winter. Great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for again, briefly back to Columbia Threadneedle, the piece from the investment bank, for the Bank of England, this process very much involves actively selling bonds into the market in the size and scale that only a central bank can do. This has come at a cost. The extra selling pressure, because there's now more on the market than there were before, has forced the price of bonds down and the yields up. And then, this means that also because the Bank of England is selling into this market and thereby depressing it, that means that investors are slightly more nervous about holding it. So they say, well, we will buy it at a lower price, but because we're now a bit more worried about the risk, the premium on them, so the interest of them does go up. So the amount of interest that the British state pays on its state debt goes up because the British central bank is actively selling into this market. Essentially, by ramming through these gilt sales, the Bank of England has deepened losses to itself, which have to be made good from the current account, i.e. literally by the taxpayer, that have to be made good, and therefore also depress the price of future bonds, making it harder for the current Labour government or any future government to borrow money to do something good. And again, all of this in the end it basically means that the UK Treasury now has to pay, give or take, 10 billion a year for the next 10 or 15 years to, if current trends continue, to the Bank of England, and therefore it doesn't have 10 billion extra to spare, which again would fund the totality of social care for the whole country. So because we have to do the chicanery, your parents have to sit in the dark with no fuel allowance, and when they get dementia, there's no care. That's how that works.
I mean, if there's one thing, observers of Osbornomics love, it's selling off state assets, whether that be some form of gilt or debt or whatever, or libraries in fucking Wolverhampton, to pay off ongoing costs.
Yes.
So yeah, no, it sounds exactly right.
And to end, and I want to come back to James. You were saying, well, it's because they want to destroy the welfare state. I think you and I will disagree on this, but let me. The Bank of England does have like an answer to why they are doing this. So when asked about this is from the Financial Times again.
Why are you doing this?
Yes, because it makes no sense. It makes no sense for the Financial Times, investment bankers, and like communist anarchist podcasters, which is a rare confluence of things. I would say. So when asked about all this,
I do feel like your investment bankers and your communist anarchist podcasters have in common is that we actually look at capitalism and try and understand what it is and what it does.
Yeah. It's what was the old thing, like the FT is Marxism from the other direction? Yeah.
Again, quoting the Financial Times, Deputy Bank of England Governor Ramsden, I don't know his first name, has answered this very clearly. The Monetary Policy Committee, i.e., the people who set the interest rate and also take this decision as to whether or not to sell off these gilts. So, like, these are the people who actually make the decisions. The Monetary Policy Committee does not take into account financial risk or profit when taking monetary policy decisions, including about the gilt portfolio, i.e. what they're saying is, when we are doing what we are doing, we don't care whether or not we make money or you lose money, which is a fantastic way of thinking about it. And basically, because the Bank of England, and specifically the Monetary Policy Committee, has an indemnity for losses, it doesn't need to consider the effects of their fuckery on the UK state, because for the purely on the Bank of England spreadsheet alone, they are absolutely fine.
A second spreadsheet has hit the economy.
Pretty much, yeah. But what happened in 2021, which again is, apart from the switch in the interest rates and all that stuff, there was one other thing that happened, which is the House of Lords issued a report, and then some other institutions, and specifically parts of the UK media, they started criticizing the Bank of England for doing all this quantitative easing, all this bond buying in the first place. Because it started to look bad now, and it started to look like, the Bank of England, which is supposed to be independent, was doing actual state support and making money printer go brr, and that, in the view of the reigning sort of economic theory, is not allowed, because that looks a lot like state support. So because the House of Lords and basically the Telegraph got mad at the Bank of England for doing quantitative easing, the Bank of England responded by saying, we are now committing wholehearted to selling off all these bonds and doing quantitative tightening. And they are, because they made those commitments and want to be seen as fiscally credible into the future, they are continuing with this process despite literally depriving the British state as it exists this year and next year of the financial oxygen it needs to build HS2.
So,
sensible, grown-up politics.
And do you know, it's like I keep saying that this is intentional, and Rob, disagrees, but they don't care. And like, I think it's important to understand who spun off the Bank of England to have its full independence, and when, and under what political circumstances, because it directly informs on this. Gordon Brown spun it off as one of the first things New Labour did when they came to power. The reason they did this is because Tony Blair and Gordon Brown and the rest of them had sold out the working class movement, and so they're like, look, we will convince capital that no Labour government will ever do anything really extreme, and thereby will be better able to take the reins of power, and we'll do this by giving capital an inbuilt mechanism that self-disciplines the spending habits of governments to come, which is only really going to be a problem for any governments that want to actually do shit. That's why that's how this whole system was set up. That's when this rule book was written. It was written by the people that Starmer and Reeves, etc., fucking talk to on the regular and look up to. And, they were writing it on behalf of, the Murdochs and the other oligarchs that they all bow down to. Like, that's what put this system in place. And so when I say, Rob might disagree, this was created as a means of diffusing the responsibility so they could all pretend to be very sad or just indifferent while they went about cutting the welfare state and preventing government spending. That's what this is. And why? And it doesn't have to be this way. It wasn't this way before 1997. But, the first Labour government gets in, Tony Blair, Margaret Thatcher's greatest triumph. And what does he do? He immediately turns around and guts the ability of a Labour government to do anything meaningful, and thus creates the circumstances under which PFI becomes a political necessity that he can sell to his own left-wing support, for the reasons we've gone into, see previous episodes on PFI and its actual net effect in stripping, the British state and, putting us all into pauperdom. So, it doesn't have to be this way. It is very much an intentional system. It's not a case of, we had a good rule that we followed the best of intentions. I fundamentally do not believe this and disagree. It's actions by named political actors following an ideology in response to political circumstances, and these most recent ones that have come in are the direct continuation of it, and they're doing more of the same, except probably just with even less ability to think outside the box. And the only time, the reason the House of Lords and the rest of them got pissy when they started doing quantitative easing, etc., is because they were worried it would undermine this mechanism's ability to discipline future governments. And so that's why they're reasserting the mechanism now that the crisis necessitating quantitative easing appears to have largely passed. Open question mark. So, fuck them all.
So there are some indicators that even the Bank of England has realized that this is profoundly stupid. And they may change course, but we have to see if they do in the future. But the thing I wanted to return to is sort of the point where we started, is Rachel Reeves does this whole song and dance about, there's a black hole,
Fiscal
22
rules,
billion, and la la. It's a whole serious thing. But in that speech, she could have said, she didn't, but she could have said, actually, it's not a 22 billion hole, it's a 32 billion hole, but 10 billion of that is simply going out the door because the Bank of England is fucking the current account of the British state. But there's a reason she doesn't do that, and there's a reason, this stuff, which is incredibly material and talks about vast sums of money, but is, I will grant you, a bit harder to grasp than we will simply, cut them with the fuel allowance and make things less nice. That's pretty easy shit. This is takes a couple of steps and some thinking and about 40 minutes of a podcast to explain. So it doesn't land that well in a fucking 20 minutes Rachel Reeves speech. And also because it
it's a bit harder to get your focus groups to comprehend this in a way that's easy to then spin out whatever horse shit they shit out.
I think what they say is that we created the Bank of England so they could issue us the national credit card. I think that was it.
Right. So, having said all this, I think that is quite enough vegetables for one evening. Would everybody
I need to give one last kicking to the Bank of England, and because they are, as far as I'm concerned, just as a bit worse, but of the same ilk as the OBR, the body that produces completely insane graphs every 6 months that bear no resemblance to reality. So constraining ourselves with busy work to prevent anything good ever happening.
This is an ad break on Podcasting as Praxis. This advert is for the Patreon of Podcasting as Praxis. On the Patreon of Podcasting as Praxis, you will get at least 2 monthly bonus episodes of Podcasting as Praxis, where we discuss lots of topics, including new types of guy, celestial boondoggles, monetising whale shit, and, reluctantly, Scott Paul. You will also be able to join the Podcasting as Praxis Discord, a place to talk with like-minded people about lots of topics, including new types of guy, celestial boondoggles, monetising whale shit, but not Scott Paul, and also, of course, Podcasting as Praxis. If that isn't enough Podcasting as Praxis for you, the Discord also includes a bonus channel where we post the bits that don't make the final cut of the episodes. Fans of both mediocre and bad podcasting have everything to gain by subscribing to the Patreon of Podcasting as Praxis. You will also no longer get ads on episodes of Podcasting as Praxis. £5 a month will get you all of that and maybe more at patreon.com/you guessed it, PraxisCast. That's patreon.com/PraxisCast, the place where we sell Podcasting as Praxis.
That's it.
Certainly. Now, there are good things happening, though. Well, good things do happen, but not to the good people.
Not
Oh
to
boy,
us.
have I turned up in time for good things?
You have turned up. Your sense of timing is fucking exquisite, David. I swear to God.
Congratulations on avoiding us talking about the Bank of England for 45 minutes, David. I'm hell of an impressed.
Yeah, you literally
fuck
turned
yeah.
up right as we were about to jump into headfirst into the delicious cake that is dessert.
Super.
Yeah, we're drinking syrup straight out of the bottle, David. That's where we're at.
Yeah.
Fucking
So what?
mainlining Angel Delight. Here we go.
No,
Yeah, so
freezing original formula iron brew in the freezer and tapping off the syrup for you, David. That's what it is.
Ooh, yes, please.
Right. So she's been gone from the pages for a while, but she's back now with a brand new piece. It is maybe the pod's favorite author. It's Helen Kerwin Taylor. If you don't remember who she is, she's the one who wrote the B article.
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
Yes.
I missed the B article first time round, so I'm really happy for this. Thank you, Rob. Please give me a second portion.
I wonder what she's been up to.
Well, she went on holiday and has some complaints.
I'm just going to ask at the outset.
Ask
at the outset. Are any of them B related?
No, but if you don't know who she is, you don't have to know. She's basically some American who married what must be an extremely wealthy English investment banker, and now has had a column for a while in the Times that stopped, but now she's back at least for one encore performance. Once again, complaining about the lives of people who really have way too much motherfucking money. This time, quote title: "Why I am never going on a group holiday again." From clashing parent styles to enforced games in 35-degree heat, putting more than one family in a villa is hell, says Helen Kerwin Taylor.
Oh.
Right, okay.
The email comes in early January. We're thinking of taking a villa in Tuscany this July and wondered if you'd like to join, it reads.
I hate when I receive a death threat in my email.
You look for the small print. Is this an invitation to come and stay, or an invitation to come and pay? How many
attendees are suggested to bring their own pillows?
And also conspicuous costumes that they can, and open wardrobes where they could personally be fit into. How many other people did they send this to first? The email is BCC'd. It's impolite, my British husband says, to ask who else is coming and whether the villa is self-catering. Brackets, group holiday hell. More about this later.
Is she at risk of complaining that she might have to cook a meal for herself?
Yes. In fact, wait until later in the article.
The woke EU and GDPR has ruined holidays forever.
No. It's other people. Hell is other rich people, David.
Oh, yeah.
Sadly,
yeah, no.
Sadly, she only knows how to cook with an Arga.
It's not the Middle East conflict we're talking about, but we're still in a realm of tension.
Oh, okay, yeah. Let's. I love to invoke a genocide.
Yeah,
to talk about my holidays.
Tensions in the Middle East and my holiday home are rising.
Yeah.
Fucking hell.
Ongoing genocide in Gaza, having to clean up some toast crumbs in my villa in Tuscany. It's not the same. It's pretty close.
I can understand why she's invoking the spectre of genocide under apartheid, given that she's being forced in her holiday to not live under apartheid for once and have to put up with some equals. Oof, that's very difficult.
I am not English and did not go to boarding school. I never had to learn how to endure the hours of boredom in chapel or coexist with 20 stroppy teenagers in a small dorm. These are transferable skills I did not acquire as an American, which...
I'm sorry, but what the fuck else? Where else are those skills transferable other than, apparently, a tedious group holiday?
which I now realize would help me cope with group holidays. A favourite among the British from the honourable to the street sweeper.
What?
Do street sweepers have no honour? Are they honourless curs and dogs?
The honourable
Can you not
as a
turn your
member
back
of the
upon
House of
them for
Lords.
fear that they will shank you with their brooms? Like, what?
The honourable is capitalised, i.e., member of the House of Lords.
I know,
that
this is
No,
this is what you call
she's just a
an
keen observer
absurdism.
of Bushido.
From the honourable to the Ronin, they all go on to group holidays. Group bookings in the UK increased by 77% in compared to 2022, with demand more than doubling when compared to pre-pandemic levels. There is no faster way of catching up than all piling into one house.
Everyone's broke. Sorry, what?
Holidays are a sacred space, so how you spend them is really important, especially if you work.
Pouring out
it's
the
not-
solid circle, putting
It's
on
not-
the clowning cap, getting into my sacred space to sunbathe. Sure, okay.
It's not like she's sharing a fucking static caravan in a Kent holiday park, is it?
No, it's much worse, actually, as that.
Oh no,
However-
Butlins, Bognor Regis.
However,
It's Scunthorpe.
However, only you know what you like to do and what time you think breakfast should be. Brackets, not 7 a.m. Perhaps, like me, you suffer from comfort addiction.
Do not become
Affluenza?
addicted to comfort, my friends. Okay.
This motherfucker
Don't like
addicted to
nice
smoking
things.
weed. Hate to hear it.
Yeah, I suppose being addicted to nice things is, conspicuously un-British of her, so okay, that checks out.
Perhaps, like me, you suffer from comfort addiction and aren't that great with unheated Scottish houses that only have enough hot water for one person.
Okay,
Maybe.
right, actually, I'm starting to get a little bit of sympathy for her, but only a little bit. Carry on.
Maybe you don't like slime-covered swimming pools that make the children break out in awful rashes and result in late-night visits to the local A&E.
Right, so she had a shit holiday, and we get an article out of it. Great, awesome. I
When
love how
asked
she
to-
makes this everyone else's problem.
Yes, this is how the commentariat actually works.
Yeah, I know, but...
Where's Adrian Childs when you need him? I want to hear about his fucking urinal in the living room again.
I want to hear about Giles Corden, Jesus Christ. I want to hear about Adrian Childs going away to some really shitty, like low rated, even for Butlins, and having the time of his fucking life.
Butlins is where I learned to be human.
Deprived of all the capital that had alienated me from my fellow man, in the shadow of the leaning tower, I finally learned what it was to connect to others over a very depressing meal of fish and chips. Like, yeah, I could see that. That is an article waiting to happen. You grabbed the leaf with that one, David.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
When
Adrian Childs
asked-
visits the world's last Harry Ramsden's.
I mean, like
Adrian Childs is Little Chef.
this lady's character arc. So apologies, I've forgotten her name already. It just doesn't have shit on Adrian's. Like, yeah,
No.
he's a real one.
Yeah, he's the one good boy allowed.
When asked to join us, how could you possibly ask, is this house heated? Is it in good nick, i.e. no major leaks, electrics not life-threatening? And this is before you get into the human dynamics. Will there be a hoorah Brexiteer, a penny pincher who claims he doesn't drink so much when the bill comes, brackets when he's drunk? You can't exactly ask, how are the other children coming brought up?
Oh. I hate this. I hate this so much.
Child-centered parenting. If you're thinking of doing it, then please say no to any group invitation. I have a friend whose child never went to bed, Every outdoor dinner in the villa overlooking the sea in Ibiza was a repeat performance of tantrums and food throwing.
Hello, this is my son, the Russian sleep experiment.
My son is also called Guantanamo.
I found my son just outside the Chernobyl exclusion zone. How about you?
He just runs like that, don't worry.
I don't understand. Since they hit puberty, they demand to be called anomaly. It's very confusing.
It hurts to look at them sometimes. I don't know what that's about.
They're really good at loading and unloading the dishwasher, though. Don't have to touch a thing.
Several group holidays I have been on. So she's not been on one, she's been on more than one. That's the good news. So we have, someone with experience.
I love to learn lessons.
Several group holidays I have been on required therapy afterwards, and not just because the houses were ghastly.
See, this is how we know she's not lying about that comfort addiction. You wouldn't constantly do something that requires regular therapy revisits if you weren't addicted to it.
On one skiing holiday in Klosters, our young children were up, dressed and fed, whereas our friends' children were, quote-unquote, free range, showing up on the ski slopes half naked and unfed, their ski boots not even closed.
I mean, that's just normal. You don't do your fucking boots up, so you've like worn them up a bit, got to the top of the... Shut the fuck up.
Neither parent felt that it was their job to do the looking after, brackets, they are high-powered lawyers. So it fell to us to feed and bathe them, not to mention supervise them on the slopes when the parents refused to pay for a guide.
What the fuck does a high-powered lawyer look like?
8 feet tall, 2 hearts, massive rib cage.
Fully
Progenoid gland.
Yeah. Are those ski boots or are those power armor? turning up to the ski slope with half their power armor on.
Getting snow blindness because my scouter exploded off my face.
Fucking hate it when the neighbors' kids don't have their fucking Thunderhawk with them. On another group holiday in Italy, we discovered that not all nannies are made equal.
Oh my Christ alive.
No,
wow.
This is the fucking power paragraph. Let me see if I can get through the whole thing.
Did the lawyers write this one?
We were 4 couples with 3 nannies and 8 children. None of them was paid the same rate or on the same hours. Mutiny broke out as they shared information. Rather than read by the pool, my husband practiced his crisis management skills by trying to stop the impending nanny strike.
We, brackets, 40 female, 38 male, etc., have had our hired help unionize.
Yes! Turns out that the nannies were far more skilled than junior doctors, and ours, of course, led the revolt, and she was paid the most.
Yes!
I love to hear about labour victories.
Apart from, all power to the nanny Soviet, definitely.
Yeah. The only big L in action here is the one that these families are taking.
The math here, if you're curious about how difficult she finds it is with children, is 4 couples, 3 nannies, 8 children. So there were 11 adults for 8 children, and that still wasn't enough to have a nice holiday. Apparently,
look, we have.
I could beat up 11 children. I could do that. That would be easy. 8 children, not a problem. How can fucking 11 of you not deal with 8 children?
Well, David, what if an unknown number of them are anomalous?
That's very true. What if one of them is a devotee of Zinch? That's
I mean, the subtext to this is these guys don't do communal anything, let alone communal childcare, and that is inherently traumatic to them. What do you mean? I might have to not only look after my own children, but look after my neighbours' children? That's something that paupers do. But we're meant to be here to relax, not to, have a nice experience with our child, because it's just depressing.
It takes a village to raise a child, but I actually live in a hamlet, so fuck off.
Posted on Reddit, help, my hired help have started a chaos cult.
Then there's the invitation holiday. You're a guest and therefore you must visit 22 churches and museums before lunch. Then play tennis in 35-degree heat. Or worse, games. I am good for about 2 days and then my oppositional defiant disorder.
Sorry, does someone have a fucking gun to this lady's head when she opened her email? Like, what?
Yes. It's the gun marked politeness.
Say no?
My
but
husband mutters that...
Alistair, you have to maintain your class solidarity and bonds with these people. Otherwise, the whole system's in danger of being upset. And so, you have to stay on their good side, because God help you if you start to, actually resent each other and, division starts to develop in your approach to this whole system in which you live. So, yeah, politeness exists basically to do that. They kind of, they hate these people, but they're their peers, so they have to go along with them, because there's not that many of them.
If they're so good, James, at class solidarity, then how comes they accidentally created a nanny union?
Well, it's precisely because of these. Yeah, because of these divisions. They took their eye off the ball and their nannies unionised.
What they should have done was go to a Butlins, and they would have felt more class solidarity together by sneering at everyone else.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
They fucked up by isolating themselves.
Yeah. It's like, now they're all rich people together. They have to fight over the conch, and it's just like shit's just going very much out of control. My husband mutters that I must be polite and play said ridiculous game that involves ping pong tables and vodka shots. Why, I asks.
You're
so
American.
I can be sick tomorrow?
You're familiar with fucking beer pong? Jesus Christ.
This is your fault.
It's your game.
Yeah, you did this.
Yeah, this is your contribution to world culture.
I'm so confused. I'm an American. I'm been roped into playing beer pong, but there are no solo cups on the fucking table. So, what is this arcane game you're playing?
A friend's advice is to follow the royal family.
Where?
Put on a brown shirt before getting fucking hammered?
No, just take private jet rides as they're offered to you. Stay in people's houses. It's all fine. Don't ask any questions. Quote, they have a dine and sleep policy. You arrive at 6, have a jolly. I don't know what that is. I can guess, but that would probably be a very, very liable thing for me to guess at what a jolly means in the royal
I'm telling you, it's a
context.
wank.
A tremendous fun dinner, breakfast, and off you go. This is our policy now, she says, even if we're invited for longer. We holiday in the area around before. I find most of the time the hostess is hugely relieved. A new issue cropping up on the group holiday is
we holiday in the zone of interest.
Boy, I cannot wait for this roadside picnic.
Oh, I'm just loving the article we get out at the end. It'd be like, well, dear reader, I can't believe this. We were meant to be going on a very nice holiday to the zone of exclusion, but when we met up with the stalker, against our better interest, our wishes weren't fulfilled, and instead we grew as human beings and came to understand the implicit suffering in humanity and the inability of us to know ourselves and truly connect with what it is we truly desire, and therefore none of us can be trusted with power, but by the grace of God we may return as greater people and more in touch with the world that we've left behind. I didn't sign up for any of that shit. Yeah. Great.
Also, someone kept telling us to get out of here 2 stars.
Also, Alistair, that zone of interest, would you describe it as satanic or otherwise? A new issue cropping up on the group holiday is adult eating disorders. That's right. In 2024, you cannot assume that anyone eats a normal meal.
Oh,
A friend of
I'm sorry, is this woman just discovered that adults can have eating disorders?
yeah, or simply like different things.
Mental health? What the fuck is that? Like
shit for children. That's gay shit for babies. Get that out of my fucking holiday, please. I won't be having any of this mental health.
Look, I think it's fair to say that on this podcast we all hate rich people, not because of any sort of mental illness or anything like that. We're in it for the love of the game.
Exactly. Is your hatred pure? Yes. A friend of mine just returned from the worst Greek group holiday in her life. Quote, there were 14 of us. The hostess didn't produce one single meal. I've been reading a book about
bombs began to fall.
I've been reading a book about how time expands. How do you measure it when there are no fixed points in the day? Breakfast was literally a yogurt on your lap. No one ate together. All we did all day was wait for something to happen. Any offer to go in and cook was rebutted.
Waiting for Faga. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
When this woman goes on a group holiday, does she is she just subsumed into the hive mind? Is there no opportunity for her to just go, I'm going to go see a thing. I'm in Greece. There's probably something to go and have a look at. It is actually possible, believe it or not, when you are in a place with other people, to go and do your own thing.
Alistair, you're discovering the deep secret, which is that most of the rich and wealthy and well-to-do don't actually have any culture. They've got
and are also just
of culture,
dedicated to being really fucking miserable.
Yes.
Yes.
Like,
I mean,
look,
I've watched enough Below Deck to know that these people just do not have any joy in their souls whatsoever.
They also genuinely, like, they don't have culture. They do things that's all, like, essentially class symbols, but they don't have any deep appreciation for the likes of, say, art. Art is its monetary value and its social currency, and that's it, as far as they're concerned. So why the fuck would they actually care on holiday about seeing a bunch of these ruins, unless it was as part of an activity they could either enjoy talking about with others at the time, or talk about to others later and say how much fun they had. It's quintessentially British. You go on holiday to say you've been to a place and tell others how lovely it was while being miserable there the entire time.
She and her husband finally broke down and went to a local taverna for dinner, which led to another common dynamic.
Tears, turning up at the taverna in tears. Just please, a meal. We've been subsisting off of fucking yogurt, rice cakes, and caviar for the last 4 days.
You there, rustic peasant, do you have food? There is nothing left in my hugely expensive villa. She and her husband finally broke down and went to a taverna for dinner, which led to another common dynamic, group banishment. Quote, there was much muttering about leftovers not being good enough for us. Normally, dinner was a 2-day-old bean salad. Just...
Bake less fucking salad.
Yeah, it's... Or just, like, genuinely get better friends. Like, I'm not an expert in group holidays, but anytime we've gone anywhere with friends, it's just like, you kind of do your own thing, and then if everything matches up, it's nice. But, like, no one's forcing anybody else to eat, like, a 2-day-old fucking bean salad where you can go to the nice place around the corner. Like, just fucking... Jesus Christ.
What's coming through this is it's palpable just how little they're used to doing for themselves, and so they don't know how to handle it when they've not got someone to do it for them.
They're so used to, like, being the kings and queens of their own world, and, like, when they snap their fingers, exactly what they want happens. So if they are thrown in a situation where everybody else has the same status and money, and therefore you cannot do that, everything just goes to shit because they've never learned, like, to fucking share or accommodate, basically. The whole singing for your supper thing also gets up my nose. If a hostess wants entertainment, plenty can be hired. 2 friends were invited on a super yacht. They didn't know the host that well. brackets, trust me when I say it's not that easy to fill
This
a
is
super
literally
yacht.
below deck that is being talked about right now.
Trust me when I say it's not that easy to fill a super yacht because rich people's friends also have yachts.
The burden of going on a super yacht that you don't personally own.
Yeah. None of these people are buying a super yacht to fill it up with people who did not pay for the super yacht.
Every night, the host got blind drunk and insisted that everyone, including the crew, jump in the sea naked. Quote,
Yeah,
that
sounds
was the
normal.
That was the least offensive of the drunken activities. How can you predict
I've
how
got to say,
idiotic
this
someone
fucking
would be?
sucks. No one ever told me that if I became friends with Caligula, I was going to have such a bad fucking time whenever I got called to his palace. Like,
If you think about it, right? If you think about it, the sea is just like a really big bowl.
Are you saying that instead of a key party, you like tip members of your super yacht into staff members of your super yacht into it?
I'm assuming that's what they do. I don't know.
How can
If
you
someone
predict
buys
how
me a
you-
super yacht, I'll find out.
Quote again,
Super tank.
the worst of it is we had to tip the staff.
That's not true. You didn't need to tip the staff. You just had to have a conversation with the boss about paying them a fair wage. Why don't you try that? Oh,
Yeah.
Wait, these guys are great at getting the help to form a union. I mean, they've got expertise in this area.
Difficult guests are one thing. Then there's the difficult host scenario. I was on one holiday where the French host was screaming at his wife. How does she end up if every one of your... You know that line about, like, you know, if you meet one asshole a day, you're the nice person. If everyone you meet is an asshole, you're the asshole? You know, that thing? Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's this, basically. If every fucking holiday is like a fucking misery for her, maybe she is the fucking misery. Just, you know... Difficult guests are one thing. Then there's the difficult host scenario. I was on one holiday where the French host was screaming at his wife. I intervened, then got abused myself. Stay out of my fucking business, he said. We were getting ready to leave when I later saw the hosts cuddling and laughing together. Losing your temper and shouting at your spouse in public is perfectly normal in France, I've realised.
oh, okay.
Yeah, they all just
Excellent.
do that. They were also yelling at each other, you know, with a string of onions around their neck and with a baguette under their arms, because that is also what they do be like in France.
God, we love to receive some good Francology on this fucking podcast.
Well, spoilers.
Jesus.
Every day was theatre. They said, these are the meal times, here is the wine cellar, this is a map of the area, leave us alone, basically. We all had a blast. Except for when they were screaming at each other, but, you know, like, yeah. I said never again after our last group holiday in glacial Scotland.
Yep, okay.
Did she accidentally go on holiday in Frostpunk? The massive
summer-
heater in the center of the town ran out of coal halfway through the holiday. All the children. I appreciate all the child help though. That was great.
Yeah, but there was only enough hot water to defrost one child, so it wasn't that great.
The train stopped piercing through the snow. It all got very miserable very quickly.
ScotRail's falling apart.
This summer, we did a few days here and a few days there with some different friends, but not the full group experience. Just when the hostess is sick of you, you're off. That's the end of the article.
Just when you're sick of the writer. No, like, so here's the thing. These, like, they don't actually have any friends that they like. They've only got people who they can tolerate in small doses, is what I'm getting from this shit. And also, they don't particularly like themselves, which just makes the whole situation even worse, exasperates it when they're all in close proximity to each other. No wonder we've got it in for the bees. We just can't live in such close quarters.
Yeah, also just like the amount,
The humble
of like
bee represents everything that they don't.
well, that and like the fucking noble struggle of the nannies in the class war who fucking have every cent of our support.
Yes. I hope they all went home with stories about unionising to talk to the other house help.
Exactly. And on that note, I also hope that you return to where it is you live with tales of unionisation, because that is cool and good. And I think we will round today off with some comment or commentariat, if we have any, David.
We do have some. We do. Although
Right.
I arrived late, but prepared.
Yeah, the
But
hired
bearing
help.
gifts.
The hired help has brought a small, tasting menu of comment and commentariat.
Of the worst
Yeah.
shit. Yeah.
I've just realised that we can't have David and Jamie on the same podcast anymore, because if they start talking about doing comment or commentariat together, they might, strike for higher wages.
We get paid?
I mean, yes.
This is what happens when me and Rob fall out. We just take our eye off the ball, and then David and the rest of them unionize. It's terrible.
All right, on that note, shall
Shouldn't
we do
be so
some
French
comment-
about it. Yes. Okay. Reverse national insurance cuts, cut VAT, and renegotiate a customs union with the EU. Money for services, addresses cost of living, and an improved relationship with the EU, and it will all increase GDP. None of that anytime soon, I guess. Starmer could reverse the tabloids ranting about freedom and point out the freedoms that we have lost. Why would anyone
my God.
object to a youth mobility scheme, for example? It's a mystery.
Oh,
Comment or
Did it-
commentary.
This is a
Comment.
tween writing in The Guardian.
I think
this
this
is-
is comment, and I think the reason it's comment is because the commentariat in The Guardian are all pro austerity agenda now that Labour have won, so this feels like a scorned commenter.
Is this... I mean, it feels like it's a scorned commenter, so I'm going to say, is this Febby?
I mean, it does sound like Femi's gone into the comment section, doesn't it?
That was a comment in The Guardian.
Yes.
You'll be interested to know, though, that the Guardian has taken this really very weird bent in the comments section where they're quite mad at The Guardian because The Guardian has actually turned on Labour about the austerity stuff at this point.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So there's a lot of very fucking angry people in the Guardian comments section, which, good. They should
They'll
be.
be just posting, "I want my wallet back" over and over again.
Right. The UK authorities attempted to discourage companies from raising prices for products such as hand sanitizer during COVID, leading to shortages. In the current US election, there are debates about limits on price rises for food and for rent. Prices going up, or being high, have come to be regarded as market failures in themselves, regardless of their justifying context or their economic efficiency. If hotels, ride-home apps, events ticket sellers and airlines cannot adjust their prices dynamically, there will be two types of bad consequences for consumers. First, tickets and bookings will be sold out when some consumers most need them. Even
God.
Even though some of those with tickets or bookings would have been willing to attend another time. Second, those willing to be flexible will nonetheless end up paying a higher price because the restricted single price will have to be high enough to cover both the high demand and low demand cases. If done transparently, dynamic pricing is efficient and in consumers' interests. Comment or commentariat.
Oh, fuck off. Yeah, commentariat for sure. This is...
Yeah, commentariat, and also, I'm just going to look back at, most of recorded history and just wonder what most, not states, but, whatever you want to call them, have done with food prices throughout that period of time. Oh,
Sorry, Alistair. I'm afraid the word hetero is banned for being Marxist. You're not allowed to do that.
the heteros are at it again, I guess.
That was Andrew Lillico in The Spectator.
Yeah, there we go.
Yep.
Remember
Label's
when he was just like a
flirtation
little...
with price fixing won't end well.
He used to just be like an insane person, but it's like basically a puppy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it writes in the Express now. It's fine.
That was right. That was Spectator.
Whatever.
Yeah, same shit, different lexicon. My favourite part about that was the idea that, like, we should have actually been allowed to put the price of hand sanitizer up during COVID because that would have got it where it needed to go. Like,
yeah,
genius.
Okay,
genius.
Yeah. It would have prevented there being shortages for the rich.
Yeah. I remember that, like, the exact same argument, like when the COVID vaccine first came online, that like people should be able to buy it for the price they want because, like, if they bid more, they simply want it more. That seems reasonable.
Yeah, we love the invisible hand. What I find annoying is that when my 98-year-old mum died, who had worked in the war on Spitfires and brought up her family of 6 with no benefits but worked hard, because she died in the middle of the week and had received her weekly pension, that I had to return 4 days of it, which she was not entitled to. Comment or commentary at?
That's quite a hard one.
I'm going to say commentariat. Comment even.
I'm leaning commentariat. I think commentariat and maybe some fucking dinosaur like Little John or whatever.
I think this is commentariat. I think like the whole, like, you know, my grandmother during the war bit is like,
yeah. That was a comment. So you all fucked it. It was a comment in the Daily Mail.
I said comment.
Alistair said comment.
All right, okay, fine. Well,
yeah, adjust your spreadsheets accordingly.
Yeah. That was in a Richard Littlejohn article that was under that. Why does Labour hate older people? First they stole your winter fuel payment, now they are coming for your rail card.
Beautiful.
Right, last one.
Comment.
No. Let's make things clear. It all has to do with identity and territory.
What?
Jew, Palestinian, Muslim, white, black, Chinese, American, Indian, Russian, Ukrainian, Italian, woman, man, trans, gay, hetero, smoker, non-smoker, driver, cyclist, communist, capitalist, Labour or Tory, whatever.
This is the most confusing screen name I've ever seen.
That's what politics is all about, but also survival. And that's why democracy was invented, so that everyone is entitled to defend not only his or her interests, but above all, the interest and survival of his or her family or the people they identify with by religion, race, origin, or simply choice. That's why the contrary of democracy is fascism, brackets, from the right or from the left, because fascism is the attitude of preventing or forbidding other people from defending their identity, their group, their beliefs and their choices. Fascism has to do with how you deal with other people's opinions. People who identify with Britain and the Western civilization should be entitled to voice it and defend them without the censorship of the left-wing fascists who only recognise the rights of the minorities, other religions, and people from other continents. Comment or commentariat.
Do you know what? This might be one of the first times one of these absolute lunatics has ever defined their terms, and it is completely deranged. This is why they never do it. This is why they just sit there and say the wokes, and you say, "What do you mean by that?" And they go, "Oh, you know the ones."
Yeah, you know them. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what makes me think this might be comment, because I feel like if you get into a newspaper, either you're smart enough not to define your terms, or your editor will stop you most of the time. So I'm going to go with comment.
Sorry, I'm pulling this article because it's not vague enough.
Yeah, I mean, all I was thinking is like Civilization 7 sounds fucking not good. This is commentariat.
I'm gonna say comment.
That was a comment. That was a comment in the Daily Express on an article titled "Furious Fans Want BBC Proms Host Sacked After She Brands Rule Britannia Problematic."
Oh, for fuck's sake. Wait, one of the first ever, I swear to God, one of the first ever fucking episodes we did on this podcast was another time when the proms didn't play Rule Britannia and people got really mad at it. Fucking time is a flat circle. I hate it.
Yeah,
here.
nothing new under the sun.
Yeah, this is an annual event at this point. We love it. We should really think about, like, you know, a woke calendar and selling that.
All right.
But David, how can we do the woke calendar if you're not prepared to go shirtless in it, David? Like, I feels like this is fundamentally flawed as an idea.
No, it's fine. We do a woke calendar. Everything that's woke gets put on the calendar. Like when people say Rule Britannia's bad, in Black History Month, and National quickly checking time.is to find out what day it is today. National Make Glasgow Time Default Day. And
that's a day
I
can
will
get behind,
never celebrate that.
and we just make sure that every single year we publish it, it's 1984.
All right, I don't want to hear anything more after that. That was the grand final. We're just going to do our plugs and then leave you the fuck alone.
Truly, this was our last night of the proms. Okay, let's fuck off, shall we? Patreon.com/PracticeCast. It will get you not one but two bonus episodes a month. You can also get merch available at practicecast.tmail.com. And some Thursdays, you've got a 50-50 chance of it being right, and even then it's not 50-50 because sometimes we just don't fucking bother. 7:30, twitch.tv/practicecast. Check it out. We might be live if that's the time and the appropriate day.
Follow us on BlueSky and maybe Twitter if we can be bothered to post it there.
No, fuck that. Don't. No, just kill your Twitter account. Do it. It's worth it. You'll feel better. Anyway, bye.
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 See ya.